right, shalom. I'm in the Antiquities of the Jews, chapter 15. How the Hebrews, under the conduct of Moses, left Egypt. Thought it had some good information here. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your power. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. And that's in Isaiah 41 and 10. But let's read a few things here. Let's see. It says the Egyptians who lived near the king's palace persuaded Pharaoh to let the Hebrews go. Accordingly, he called for Moses and bid them be gone, as supposing that if once the Hebrews were gone out of the country, Egypt should be freed from its miseries. Plagues. They also honored the Hebrews with gifts, some in order to get them to depart quickly, and others on account of their neighborhood and the friendship they had with them. I'm going to read the note real quick. It says, these large presents made to the Israelites of vessels of silver and vessels of gold and raiment, that means clothing, were, as Josephus truly calls them, gifts really given them, not lent them, as our English falsely renders them. They were spoils required, not borrowed of them. Genesis 15:14, Exodus 3:22, Exodus 11 and 2, and Psalms 105, verse 37. As the same word falsely renders the Hebrew word here used. Exodus 12, verse 35 to 36. The Most High had ordered the Jews to demand these as their pay and reward during their long bitter slavery in Egypt, as atonements for the lives of the Egyptians, and as the condition of the Jews' departure, and of the Egyptians' deliverance from these terrible judgments, which had they not now stopped or ceased, they had soon been all dead men, as they themselves confess. It says 12:3, nor was there any sense in borrowing or lending when the Israelites were finally departing out of the land forever. All right. So I'm going to read how Moses conducted us out of the land of Egypt, right? So it says, so the Hebrews went out of Egypt while the Egyptians wept. They cried and repented that they had treated them so hardly. Now they took their journey by Letopolis, a place at that time deserted, but where Babylon was built afterwards, when Cambyses laid Egypt waste. But as they went away hastily, on the third day they came to a place called Baal-zephon on the Red Sea. And when they had no food out of the land, because it was a desert, they ate of loaves kneaded of flour, only warmed by a gentle heat, and this food they made use for 30 days. For what they brought with them out of Egypt would not suffice them any longer time, and this only while they dispensed it to each person to use so much only as would serve for necessity, for need, but not for to satisfy. Whence it is that in memory of the want we were then in, we keep a feast for 8 days, which is called the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now the entire multitude, the crowd of those that went out, including the women and children was not easy to be numbered, but those that were of an age fit for war were 600,000. They left Egypt in the month of Xanthicus on the 15th day of the lunar month, 430 years after our forefather Abraham came into Canaan, but 215 years only after Jacob removed into Egypt. It was the 80th year of the age of Moses. All right. And of that of Aaron 3 more. They also carried out the bones of Joseph with them, as he had charged his sons to do. But the Egyptians soon repented that the Hebrews were gone. And the king also was mightily concerned that this had been procured or been done by the magic arts of Moses. So they answered to go after them. Accordingly, they took their weapons and other warlike furniture and pursued. They chased after them in order to bring them back, if once they overtook them, defeated them, because they would now have no pretense to pray to the Most High against them, since they had already permitted to go out. They allowed them to go out. And they thought they should easily overcome them, beat them, as they had no armor and would be weary. They'd be tired with their journey. So they made haste. They ran in their pursuit and asked of everyone they met which way they were gone. And indeed, that land was difficult to be traveled over, not only by armies, but single persons. Now Moses led the Hebrews this way, that in case the Egyptians should repent, change, and be desirous to pursue, that means chase after them, they might undergo the punishment of their wickedness and of the breach of those promises, all right, they had made to them. As also he led them this way on an account of the Philistines, all right, who had quarreled or fought with them and hated them of old, that by all means they might not know of their departure. For their country is near, close to that of Egypt. And thence it was that Moses led them, not along the road that tended to the land of the Philistines, the giants, but he was desirous that they should go through the desert, that so after a long journey and after many afflictions, trouble, they might enter upon the land of Canaan. Another reason of this was that the Most High commanded him to bring the people to Mount Sinai, that there they might offer him sacrifice, gifts. Now when the Egyptians had overtaken the Hebrews, they prepared to fight them, and by their multitude they drove their size, they drove them into a narrow place. For the number that pursued after them was 600 chariots with 50,000 horsemen and 200,000 footmen, all armed. They also seized on the passages by which they imagined the Hebrews might fly. All right, they bordered off those places. So they also took on the passages by which they imagined the Hebrews might fly, shutting them up, closing them up between inaccessible, it says Persephonese, cliffs and the sea. All right, for there was on each side a ridge of mountains that terminated at the sea, which were impassable by reason of their roughness, and obstructed their flight. Wherefore they were pressed upon the Hebrews with their army, where the ridges of the mountains were closed with the sea, the water, which army they placed at the chops of the mountains, that so they might deprive them of any passage into the plain. All right, cutting off travel. It's going to happen again. It says, when the Hebrews therefore were neither able to bear up, being thus, as it were, besieged, attacked, because they wanted provisions, food, and nor saw any possible way of escaping. And if they should have thought of fighting, they had no weapons. They expected a universal destruction unless they delivered themselves, saved themselves, or given themselves up to the Egyptians. So they laid the blame on Moshe, and forgot all the signs that had been done by the Most High for the recovery of their freedom. And this so far that their incredibly prompted them to throw stones at the prophet, right? While he encouraged them and promised them deliverance. And they answered that they would deliver themselves. They're going to save themselves or deliver themselves up to the Egyptians. So there was sorrow and lamentation and crying among the women and children who had nothing but destruction before their eyes. Right? We ain't got nowhere to go. We gonna take the vaccine. We ain't gonna have no food. We ain't got no money. So it says, so there was sorrow and lamentation among the women and children who had nothing but destruction before their eyes in front of them, while they were encompassed, surrounded with mountains, the sea, and their enemies. Mountains, government, the sea, troubles, their enemies, the devil, and discern no way of flying from them, getting away from them, escaping. But Moses, though the multitude, the crowd, looked fiercely at him, did not, however, give over the care of them, but despised, he hated all dangers. All right. He hated all dangers out of his trust in the Most High, who, as he had afforded them the several steps already taken for the recovery of their liberty, their freedom, which he had foretold them, he already told them, would not now allow them to be subdued, taken by their enemies, to be either made slaves or be slain, right? Would not allow them to be subdued by their enemies, or to be either made slaves or be killed by them. And standing in the midst of them, he said, it is not just, that means it's not right of us, Israel, to distrust Israel, even men, when they have hereto well managed our affairs, business, as if they would not be the same man here and after. But it is no better than madness at this time to despair of the providence, the care of the Most High, by whose power all those things have been performed which he promised. When you expected no such things, you didn't even expect no such things. I mean, all that I have been concerned in for your deliverance and escape from slavery. Nay, now when we are in the uttermost distress, Israel, as you see we ought rather to hope that the Most High Power will secure, that means protect us, by whose operation it is that we are now encompassed, surrounded within this narrow place, that he may deliver us out of such difficulties. the same one that put you in, he can pull you out of the difficulties as are otherwise insurmountable, and out of which neither you nor your enemies expect you can be delivered, saved, spared, and may at once demonstrate his own power and his providence care over us. Nor does God, the Most High, use to give his help in small difficulties to those whom he favors. All right. But in such cases, all right, where no one can see how any hope, let's see if I can, how any hope in man can better their condition. I need to read that again. Huh? Let's look at this again. It says that he may deliver us out of such difficulties as are otherwise insurmountable, and out of which neither you nor your enemies expect you can be saved, and may at once demonstrate his own power and his providence, his care over us. Nor does God use to give his help in small difficulties to those whom he favors. Okay. Whom he favors. But in such cases where no one can see how any hope in man can better their condition. Depend, therefore, upon such a protector as is able to make small things great, and to show that his might, that this mighty force against you, is nothing but weakness. And be not affrighted at the Egyptian army, nor Rome's, nor Babylon's, nor do you despair of being preserved, because the sea before and the mountains behind, and affords you no opportunity. It gives you no chance for flying, escaping. For even these mountains, if the Most High power, Ahaya, so please, may be made, if the Most High so please and may be made plain ground for you. Okay, if he pleases, he can make this mountain or the trouble that's in front of you made plain as the ground for you, and the sea become dry land. Right. So that's the faith that we need to have right there. We need to know that. I'll read it again. Because the sea before and the mountains behind you affords you no opportunity. That means no chance for flying, escaping. For even these mountains, if the Most High so please, may be made plain ground for you. Right? May be created plain ground for you, and the sea become dry land. Okay. All right. And again, the Antiquity of the Jews, chapter 16, right? How the sea was divided in half for the Hebrews, and when they were pursued by the Egyptians, and so gave them an opportunity of escaping from them. All right, so we're going to read a little bit of that. I'm going to cut it short on that, but I do want you to hear this. Oh, I don't know why the flash was on in the first place. All right, so it says, when Moses had said this, he led them to the sea, while the Egyptians looked on, for they were within sight. Now these were so distressed, they were so sad by the toil, the work of the pursuit, that they thought proper to put off fighting till the next day. But when Moses was come to the seashore, he took his rod and made supplication. He made prayer to the Most High, and called upon him to be their helper and assistant, and said, You art not ignorant, O Most High, that it is beyond human strength, manpower, and human contrivance to avoid the difficulties we are now under, but it must be by your work altogether to procure deliverance to this army which has left Egypt at your appointment. We despair of any other assistance or contrivance plan, and have recourse only to that hope we have in you, Ahiah. And if there be any method that can promise us an escape by your providence, by your care, we look up to you for it. Do you hear that? It says, for we have hope, that hope we have in you, in the Most High. And if there be any method, any way that can promise us an escape by your providence, by your care, we look up to you, the Most High, for it. And let it come quickly, all right? And manifest, reveal your power to us. That's what we need to be praying. Anyway, and do you raise up this people unto good courage and hope of deliverance, who are deeply sunk, they're depressed into a disconsolate state of mind. All right. We are in a helpless place, but still it is a place that you possesseth. Still the sea is thine, yours, the mountains also, and that enclose us are yours, so that these mountains will open themselves if you commandeth them, and the sea also, if you commanded it, will become dry land. Nay, we might escape by a flight through the air. If you should determine, we should have that way of salvation, that way of protection. I love that. When you hear all what was saying right there, that's awesome. You don't need to trust no man or nothing else. He's the ultimate cure, and he will fix it. He'll fix all of it if you put your trust in him. Again, it says, we are in a helpless place, but still it is a place that you possess. Still the sea is thine, the mountains also that enclose us are yours, so that these mountains will open themselves if you command it or demand them. And the sea also, if you command this or demand it, it will become dry land. Nay, and we might escape by a flight through the air if you should determine we should have that way of salvation, that way of protection. If that's his will. Okay. When Moses had then addressed himself to the Most High, he hit the sea, right, with his rod, which parted in sunder at the stroke. It separated at the stroke, at the hit, and receiving those waters into itself, left the ground dry as a road and a place of flight for the Hebrews, a place to escape for the Hebrews. Now, when Moses saw this appearance of the Most High, and that the sea went out of its own place, all right, and left dry land, and when Moses saw this appearance of Christ, Yeshua, and that the sea went out of its own place because it was Christ, and left dry land, he went first of all into it, and bid the Hebrews to follow him along that divine road, and to rejoice at the danger their enemies that followed them were in, and gave thanks to the Most High, which this state would be Christ, for this is so surprising a deliverance which appeared from him. All right. So let's read it again. It says, rejoice. It says that he went first of all into it and he told the Hebrews to follow. Come on. All right. And they got on the divine road, and to rejoice at the danger that the enemies were in. They were laughing, and shouting that followed them were in. He was saying, hey, they're in danger. And he gave thanks to the Most High, which the Word of God, he gave thanks to Christ for this so surprising a deliverance which appeared from him. All right. It came from the command of the Most High, but it was Christ who led them through the sea. All right. And that was their spiritual baptism. Right. They went on through the sea. But you don't know how your salvation is going to come. That's why it says, stand still, see the salvation of the Lord. And don't put your trust in man, put your trust in the Most High. And so, I like some of the info that was coming out, and I think that people need it in this time to hear this. It says, let me go back. It says, we despair of any other assistance. We don't want any other help. All right? Or contrivance, or plan, or design. All right? And have recourse only to that hope we have in you. We're going back to having nothing but faith in you, and nothing else, in the Most High. And if there be any method, it says, if there be any way that can promise us an escape by your providence, your care, we look up to you for it. We look for the Most High for it. Not man, not a vaccine, none of that. We look up to the Most High for it. And let it come quickly. Right? Right? And manifest your power to us. Show your power to us. Right? And do you raise up this people unto good courage and hope of deliverance. Right? Who are deeply sunk into a disconsolate state of mind. We are in a helpless place, but still it is a place that you possess. Still the sea is dying, right? The mountains also that enclose us are yours. That's what Moses was saying. The sea is yours, the mountains that are around us, so that these mountains will open themselves if you commandest them. He said, if you demand them. Moses didn't say, I demand them and let us walk on dry ground. No, he said, if you command them, and the sea, the ocean also, if you command it, will become dry land, that we might escape by flight through the air. If you should determine, if he choose that, we should have that way of salvation. He put it in the hands of the Most High. And when Moses had then addressed himself to Christ, well, to the Most High, he smote the sea with his rod, which parted in half at the stroke, and receiving those waters into itself, left the ground dry as a road, and a place of escaping for the Hebrews, says Flight. Now when Moses saw this appearance of, it says God, of Christ, or you could even put that Elohim, right? And that the sea went out of its own place and left dry land, he went first of all into it. And he saw, like when Yeshua was on the sea and Peter saw him walking on water, Peter was like, I'm going. He went first of all into it and told the Hebrews to follow him along that divine road. It was a powerful road. And it was only for the children of Israel, the Israelites. And to rejoice, to laugh at the danger their enemies that followed them were in. You can't go where we going. And gave thanks to the Most High for this. So surprising, he didn't know it. So surprising, a deliverance, saving, which appeared from him. Now while these Hebrews made no stay, but went on earnestly as led by Christ's presence with them. It says God's presence, so Yeshua, Christ's presence with them. The Egyptians supposed at first that they were distracted and were going rashly upon rashly quickly upon manifest destruction. But when they saw that they were going a great way without any harm, and that no obstacle or difficulty fell in their journey, they made haste. They ran to chase them, hoping that the sea would be calm for them also. They put their horses foremost and went down themselves into the sea. Now the Hebrews, while these were putting on their armor and therein spending their time, were beforehand with them and escaped them and got first over to the land and on the other side without any hurt, whence the others were encouraged and more courageously pursued them, as a hoping no harm would come to them neither. But the Egyptians were not aware that they went